Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Roundup here on BloodbowlLive. Here to go through all of the week's action from the last week of the ADBBL Season 8. 10 games to go through with you this week. And to go through those games, we have myself. We also have Mr. Scott Bryant. Scott, hello, sir.
Good evening, Chris. How are you this evening?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Good.
And we're also joined, as always, by Mr. Tom Hovell. Tom, how are we doing?
Yep, all good, thank you. Recovering after my game, which we'll come to shortly.
Yes, we'll get to your game and we'll get the violins out and the hot blankets, the towels they put over you when you sat in the back of an ambulance after a car accident. We'll get all of that out. We've got many games, 10 games to go through. We're not dipping into Scott's corner this week. Scott has yielded his time so that we can fit all the games in. So we're going to dive straight in to the first game that we had this week, which was a Necromantic Horror versus Khorne. It was the Wolverswampton Shamblers versus the Gilded Knights of Cerulean. A 1-0 victory for the Khorne team in what looks like by the turn markers to be quite a long game here, and what looks like on the face of it to have been quite a kind of grindy, bashy affair, but not many casualties, not many SPP coming home for either coach here. Just the MVPs and the touchdowns, and the one casualty for the Khorne side. Scott, we'll come to you first. I'll be honest with you for this one. I think looking at the two coaches, looking at how the two coaches have maybe performed over previous seasons with other teams or with these teams, I think I probably did have this down as quite a tight matchup. So just the one touchdown being in it, I'm probably not overly shocked.
To be honest, Chris, I share those sentiments exactly. I was expecting a draw, either 0-0 or 1-1, if I'm honest. Agree with you. Two very experienced coaches, two redrafted teams. The inducement was minimal in terms of one team mascot for Jane. And as you look at it in terms of the progression, yeah, lots of fouls, not a lot else in there. In terms of casualties or sort of violence, it does suggest, especially when you take into account the time taken, a very tactical, grinding match, this one. Jane, of course, started with a win in her first match, Phil's first match of the season. So, again, a 1-0 win for the Knights. And like any coach, you'll take a 1-0 win to start with. So, unsurprisingly, looks like a bit of a good old slugfest in the middle of the pitch. No one really able to break down the other side.
I think a good result here for the Khorne team, a touchdown coming on turn 6. Looking at the way that it's difficult to tell sometimes the way that turn markers have kind of gone and how the game progressed. I think if the Khorne team started, I believe the Khorne team received the ball in the first half. So you would, I think, like you said, you would have maybe expected a 1-1 here. So a good job from the Khorne side to be able to defend for the entire second half. Tom, you're our kind of go-to necromantic horror player out of the three of us here. Jane's got some kind of good skills on these, on some of these, the redrafted ones. A werewolf with wrestle, tackle, and jump up, looking particularly good both defensively and offensively. What do you kind of think? How would you, as a necromantic horror coach, kind of plan against a Khorne team with lots of frenzy in there, less positionals to have to kind of ponder and worry about? Do you think sort of that is quite a kind of difficult defensive challenge to break through?
Yeah. So from a necromantic horror team side, she's got some really good players that really negate that frenzy attack. She's now got 3 stand firm players, include with a zombie lineman, which I don't know whether that's new from the back end of this game or another one. But yes, she's got the stand firms and she's got the side steps. So from that perspective, the Khorne team isn't as threatening as you may think, because you can negate that frenzy. But I think from her perspective, she's building her team up well, and Phil is definitely doing well with this Khorne team. He's looking at his previous matches. He's very rarely lost. He's only lost only a handful of times, but won quite considerably and also drew. So, and seeing him the other day just playing, he's playing a very strategic game as well. So as we've all said, two very good coaches, and it's not a reasonably kind of. It's not a surprise that that's the score. I would have potentially thought it might have been 0-0 or 1-1. It would have been that close, in my opinion.
I think we have to call out something you both mentioned there, gents, in terms of the effort that Phil has put in defensively this evening. Phil in chat to hold Jane. This is her third season now with Necro, and I know this is Phil's second season with this team as well. But to keep a very potent attacking threat with some particularly dangerous werewolves from the Necros and the skilled up ghoul runners as well to a nil score and to come away with a win, I just think it puts that into perspective as well. So I think both players came into us very strong and a great result defensively for Phil.
Yeah, Jane is a bit like you, Tom. Jane is kind of got this spark to her where she might just chuck something at you in a game to throw you off. So to stay composed against that. I think actually a 1-0 loss here, we all thought this would be a draw, so maybe a difficult result for Jane, but a good opponent with a good team, so shouldn't feel down at all. Well done, Phil. Currently on a very good if you take the loss, the penalty shootout loss to Elliot last season as a draw, he's on a little bit of an unbeaten run with this team in the ADBBL. So we'll see how far he can go. We've got another game of his coming up, so we will look at that in a bit. But let's move on now to another game that happened this week. And we have got the Knuffle Dusters versus the World's Edge Berserkers. A absolute bash fest happening here. Norse versus Dwarfs. Lots of block on either side. We've got a Dwarf team that has been here a couple of years now. Lots of Mighty Blow and guards throwing around there. Block on players that wouldn't normally have blocks. So a very kind of strong team there against a brand new Norse lineup for Dave, dropping the nose from last season and bringing the Norse in. Dave with a competitive team we've seen in previous seasons with his Lizards get all the way to the final, and we've seen Jamie in the last few seasons consistently have good groups, consistently put up really good fights against really tough opponents, and arguably be sort of unlucky to not get further when it comes to the knockout. So two very strong opponents here. It might get a bit repetitive this week, but probably again, Tom, maybe not a massive surprise that it was a draw here.
No, and it's also the second time we've seen people taking team mascot as an inducement.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
You got me on this when we were playing a tournament, I think, or a friendly, and it is a really nice little lifesaver. It's sitting there in the background. Interesting to see how much Helmut Wolf got on. Doesn't really seem to have appeared much. And again, that's something I'll be keeping an eye on throughout this season, is how much of an impact do these super players or star players, kind of come into their own. Those World Edge Berserkers, they're in my lineup, and I'm not looking forward to them at all. they look immense with all that Mighty Blow, block, and tackle in there.
So a bit on, we'll look at the World Edge Berserkers a bit in a second, but just on the Norse team. Norse teams have always kind of historically done quite well in the ADBBL. Scott, looking at kind of the lineup here, he's randomed diving tackle on a Valkyrie. Maybe not the random that you want, but Dauntless on a lineman could be quite a good utility with the block there already. What do you kind of... Are the Norse teams sort of... They're tier 1 clearly for a reason, so they must have some kind of security behind them. Is that why they kind of seem to do so well in our league? Is that kind of the thing? Is it the block? Sort of, what is it about them?
Block gives them that starting edge. They've got that ability then across the board, well, at least of all their linemen, to be able to put pressure on the opposition line straight away. Agree with you, diving tackle, perhaps not the greatest random that you could do on a Valkyrie in particular, Dauntless, always useful if you want to get, with block as well, if you're looking for maybe at least getting a 1 dice block on a big guy or something else. I was really interested. We talked about this on NDP. I was really intrigued that Dave has gone for the Yeti. He's gone for the big guy from the off instead of any Norse berserkers. So that really intrigued me in terms of how he's thinking in terms of the setup of this team. Going up against the World Edge Berserkers and Jamie, who are a very good team and put the fear into most coaches, including our reigning champion, Tom, the other Tom, who said on the season 8 draw that, oh no, I'm playing the Dwarves again. So I think it was a really good result in terms of the Knuffle Dusters. First, yes, Norse are a good, as you said, Chris, good solid tier 1 team, but you've still got to turn up and play them, especially against a skilled up team like Jamie's as well. I think taking Helmut Wolf was a great choice because obviously you've got +3 on the chainsaw, and everybody loves a chainsaw at the end of the day. Who doesn't?
There are only
Chaos Dwarfs you don't know.
Oh, and there was a casualty. A dead dwarf runner, which is always a good thing to see.
There are only 3 teams in the AGBBL that I think me and Scott were checking this. 3 teams out of all 8 seasons that have featured 4 times or more, and one of them is the World's Edge Berserkers. So I do wonder whether there is sort of you've got this argument that a lot of us like to try different teams and move them in. Jamie sticks to the Dwarfs. And I feel like every season that he sticks to it, he will be more and more terrifying. And to me, it's only a matter of time before we see him sort of in a final and really pushing forward. So we'll see how they both get on. We will move on to our next game, flying through as we are this week, which is the Plague Brigade versus the Suffolk Suckers. That's going to be one at some point I'm going to mess up, and hilarity will ensue for all. But we've got Skaven here versus Vampires, and we've got another draw. We've got a 0-0 draw, something that I think of all the teams that we've got, Vampires versus Skavens, I would have probably pegged for being a high-scoring draw if it was going to be a draw. Holding Skaven to not scoring any touchdowns is a very good feat. So well done to Andy. And I think, Skaven keeping the Vampires at bay is equally as good. What I do know about this one, Tom, I'll come to you again first because you are our token vampire coach, and this is particularly relevant for the vampires.
Master of none.
So, I believe on turn 1, Andy had used up all of his rerolls and lost 2 players, and I believe by turn 2 he was down to about 6. So players went very quickly from that vampire team, arguably making it all the more impressive that he has managed to keep the score at 0-0 and not concede with such a early kind of destruction.
Absolutely, yeah. Considering how, like as you say, how nimble Skaven are, to hold them back with only 6 players, that is very impressive to be able to do that. But it does look like he's had a welcome to the vampire world by turn 3 with 3, 4, or even 5 players sent off or injured or on the ground. But he's also, interestingly, he's taken a Vargeist as well. So a bit like we were saying with the Norse and the Yeti. I'll look forward to seeing how that plays out, because my experience with the Vargeist is that it is a bit of a glass cannon. If it works really well. But if you get it down and you keep someone near it, it can't really do much. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Equally, he's got a lot of SPP on a thrall lineman. So maybe he'll give him a bit of block and keep him away from the vampires and use him as some kind of defense. But all the best to him.
3 vampires and a Vargeist does feel like a kind of risky play to start with. His team value is currently looking quite low, quite thrall heavy. It'll be interesting to kind of see if he can keep the vampires in play. How that kind of goes for him. Scott, I mean, are, you know, you've had more Skaven seasons than I am, and as we all know, winning 4-0 with Skaven is, you know, is perfectly easy, as has been established by Mr. Tom Hovell. What do you think to his these Plague Brigade Skaven lineup here? They've gone for the Rat Ogre. There are only 2 Gutter Runners in that team. There's a Rat Ogre, 2 Blitzers, 2 Gutter Runners, and a Thrower. I would say that's unusual as far as they go. He hasn't kind of. I would have expected at least a 3rd Gutter Runner. To only be running 2 does limit you a little bit.
It does. It's not an atypical setup for Skaven, but we know Skaven have so much versatility within their team. I'm really pleased he's taken the Rat Ogre. I was super pleased that if you look at turn 2, the Rat Ogre does what he does best when he decides to turn up. He actually got a casualty, and it was a stat bust. Beautiful. The only thing the Rat Ogre really didn't do that I can see, and maybe someone in chat will be able to tell us, if he actually knocked himself out and took himself off the pitch, because then it's the perfect evening for the Rat Ogre. Get a stat bust on an opposition, get yourself off the board. It will be interesting to see where Luke takes his team. He's got 1 lineman with 4 SPP. He needs to randomize that, see what he gets. If it's good, keep it. If it's not, get rid of it. And I think, yeah, he's got in the kitty now just 5k. I don't know. What's he got? He's got just the 2 assistant fans, but he's gotten for the extra re-roll early. Yeah,
the APOC as well in there to keep players on.
Yeah, he's got the A, but he's only got the 11. So it looks like he's done the trade-off between the extra re-roll and the just the 2 gutter runners. So I think if he can keep it tight, particularly for the first couple of matches, then I think he's got a good base to work off, because you can always get a gutter runner 85k, and you can skill them up quite quickly with a few touchdowns. So I think he's got a good base with that 3rd reroll. He can still get leader on the thrower, which is always a good one as well. So yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how he continues. We saw last season for Carl and the Skaven, when they get in a zone where people are punching them around the pitch, they can lose players very quickly. So my only concern would be what you expect from Skaven. How much of a glass jaw have they got? Otherwise, I think he's not in a bad place. And to take a 0-0 draw, maybe a bit disappointed, especially if he was taking the Vampires off the pitch and putting himself in good position. But again, Andy's a good coach, and he plays with a really great attitude.
Yeah, it'll be my only concern for the Rats would be that they're kind of missing running 2 gutter runners. Makes me think that they're going to be quite defensive, and maybe, you know, if someone targets those 2 gutter runners, they could be short on a offensive threat quite quickly. But we will see how both of these coaches get on. A new team for Andy, and an old familiar for Carl. So we'll see how they progress as the season goes on. Moving on then to a matchup that I'm always very intrigued by the matchup of Norse versus Amazons. 2 teams that were released at a similar time. One team built with dodge everywhere, one team built with block everywhere. They've got similar when it comes to positionals. They're very similar. The Norse have the big guy and the beer balls, but otherwise they kind of mirror each other quite nicely with regards to the positionals here. Maybe then, when you look at the 2 teams on paper, I think you would say not a lot in between them, other than you would maybe expect the Norse to be a bit fightier. And you look at this result, and it's 1-1 with more casualties to the Norse. So it's possibly exactly what you expect. But looking at last season and maybe at other previous seasons, Gut says that Graham will be happier with this result than Jack would, because Graham's previous seasons with Skaven has often lost a lot of players. So so a 1-1 draw. Scott, Graham possibly will be happy to start his season in this way and not having lost too many people. Having said that, there is a dead Python thrower in there, but you know, not as bad as previous seasons that he has started.
I think having a new team, having a dead Python thrower, which is called out in the match report onto a play. Big thank you for Luke for putting all the match reports on. They make it really much more interesting and make our jobs a little bit more easier. So big thank you for that, Luke. When you're on a new team, yes, you're up against a redrafted team with a lot of block as well, who go 1-0 up. You're down against it. Apparently the throw was failing to pick up the ball a lot, so perhaps deserved to die. After that, it was all very. I think it was a great result for Graham. I think maybe Jack might feel a little bit aggrieved there, but that's the way of it goes sometimes. But we know the Norse. Jack plays them a lot. He plays them well. They can be a very, very dangerous side. So I think it's a good result for Graham, especially the amount of block versus dodge we had tonight.
Tom, weirdly, I guess you're also our Amazon expert. Being one of the first teams you came into, you're just going to be our expert for every single game this week, by the sounds of it. How do you think then? Do these two teams sort of on paper neutralize each other? Because does the fact that the dodge prevents them being knocked down on certain rolls, the block prevents the other team being knocked down on certain rolls? Does it kind of create a very nice balance here where actually even armor wise they're pretty similar and there's very little in it? How do either team kind of exploit a block hole or a dodge hole when there's such balance?
Yeah, they are very yin and yang, aren't they? They do kind of counter balance each other out. I've played Jack now a number of times, so those special Huns dice have obviously come to fruition here because he's got a lot of casualties in, and that if anyone's not seen his new Norse team, they look fantastic and just well done for a fantastic paint job and conversion on them. Amazons are one of those funny ones, like you say, very good in defense when you've got like a lot of dodge everywhere, but that dodge doesn't help you as well as like the elves. So you still have a 3-up dodge to get away from places. So to in my mind, the Norse slightly have the upper hand on that kind of scale. But as you say, they are pretty evenly matched. It was clear that they were. I think Jack was taken back by the quick touchdown and tried to quickly respond to level the score again. And then it kind of just turned into a bit of I think it looks like a little bit of a slogfest at the end of the game. So it would be interesting to see how these two play out. Again, like you've mentioned there, Jack coming back with his Norse team. I don't think I've ever seen him play anything else than Norse. So a bit like Jamie in the World's Age Berserkers, so just dwarfs. So maybe, as we've said a number of times, rather being an expert in multiple teams, as you keep saying I am, should just stop and just do one team and do that team just badly.
We'll come back to Jack a bit later because we've got another one of his games to look at. Unfortunate for Graham to have lost a rather expensive positional, but he's still running with 11 players in his team. Team value is under 1,000k, so a good start for him to this season. And I always feel like, Tom, in a way similar to you, I always feel like Graham plays well and sometimes has the worst dice for or against him that make him fall over. So similar to my hope with you, I'm hoping that Graham sort of sees has less of that bad luck this season and maybe comes forward.
We have to play each other at some point, so let's see what happens. Maybe when we roll, the dice just stand in momentum, just constantly spinning, not being able to land.
I think I make a prediction, Tom. Your match against Graham will either be over in 10 minutes or it'll take 6 hours.
Yeah, your dice are going to be sort of buttered toast on the back of a cat situation where which side is it going to land. We will go on to our next game, which is the Chaos Renegade versus the Black Orcs, the Orphic Gladiators versus Baldur's Army. This is an interesting one because I know from speaking to Luke that he was rolling some pretty terrible dice on those big guys during this game. The three big guys were not playing ball, and a 1-0 win here for him. Possibly sort of in a way fortunate, because if your big guy's bonehead in a Chaos Renegade team every time, then you're playing the game with just 8 linemen and no other support. And it's odd to say, Tom, it does feel weird to say this. You've played Leanne before. I looked at this result and I felt really happy for Leanne because it was only 1-0. And that sounds harsh. Leanne's results haven't been great last season. And I actually wonder whether her kind of giving the fight to Luke here a little bit and being able to put up a fight, even though she hasn't got the win out of it, I think hopefully there'll be kind of a bit of a confidence boost that maybe defensively she's maybe to do a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. She's getting the hang of this team. So previously she brought Amazons. Now she's got Black Orcs. So I think they are kind of doing her a little bit of favor, especially with bringing Bomber Dribblesnot. So she's starting to learn these star players as well and how best to match them up. So I think the Orcs are doing well for her. I think the fact that they've got a bit more resilience, that they can stay on the pitch a little bit longer. Plus, also you've got some annoying little goblins running around as well. It's all the better. I always find the Chaos Renegade team a funny little team. Really, they're not not as bad as Old World Alliance, but clearly a lot of different positionals, but don't really kind of gel well together. So again, I'll be interested to see how Luke gets on with this team. Yeah.
Scott, we know how awful it is when your big guy lets you down. If you happen to take a merc and you've got 2 big guys and they both let you down, that's even worse. You take a team with 3 big guys, and all 3 of them let you down. How do you mitigate against that? Because do you have to always back them up with someone else? I mean, one of them has really stupid, so you do kind of need to back them up. One of them's got animal savagery, you do kind of need to back them up as well. Are the big guys in this team the right kind, that because you have to support them anyway, you don't leave yourself with any holes if they do fail you? Like, is it kind of the ones that are in this team are suited, or is there something else you've got to think about here?
It's a really interesting setup with Chaos Renegade. Do you go for the 3 big guys like that? Because obviously Luke hasn't got the Minotaur in place, ready to go. Or do you play something like the Minotaur and the Rat Ogre, who maybe is slightly more agile in terms of big guys versus the Ogre and the Troll as well? The Minotaur, of course, if he doesn't activate as you intend, at least he gives you the tackle zones in place as well. It's high risk, high reward when you play the big guys. 3 players with Mighty Blow is not good. So I think that gives you the base, but yeah, you've got to back them up. And you've only got, you've got 1 Dark Elf, 1 Skaven, who you think, okay, there's a bit of edge there, there's a bit of movement there, but they're just normal linemen. So it's not as if, but it's good to see that Luke, he's starting to scale up. So he's put horns on his Skaven, which suggests his Skaven is going to be more of a blitzer. He's put prehensile tail on his Renegade Orc to try and control people, stop them dodging out. My key question, thinking of how he develops his team, is where's his ball carrier? Is it going to be the Dark Elf? Is it going to be his Goblin? So it'll be an interesting path in terms of how the Renegades develop. They can be a very volatile team. But again, a shout out to Leanne. I saw this result come through and I could hear Luke's sigh of relief almost from getting that win. Leanne, a great combination, as Tom shouted out, including Bomber Dribblesnot, really big bashy. And I think that suits Leanne's style, getting up in people's faces, causing problems, and then having the sort of strength to back it up as well. So I think it was a bit of a win from both sides, maybe not for the right reasons.
She's starting to pick up a few good skills on a few players here. She's got sort of a Goblin with, a few good SPP. So she's got 4 SPP on a Goblin. She's got 2 on a Black Orc, 4 on another one. She's got 3 on the Trolls. So, remaining a bit patient, she can do quite well here to get some interesting skills on some of these players. And actually, maybe this season with 8 games, taking it patiently with your skills could see you quite well come the end of the group stage. So well done to both. Well done, Luke, on the win there, and well done, Leanne. It sounds like it was a great game for both coaches. So well done on playing an entertaining game out there. Moving on then to two coaches who we have already discussed, both of them this week so far. We've got Jack back and we've got Phil back for Norse versus Corn. And what I think I have to say is a very good result for the Corn team here. A 2-0 victory here, 4 casualties on that team, 18 SPP for the Corn team. A very, very good result here. And it looks like Jack took a little bit of a beating. A dead lineman on turn 1, a miss next game lineman by turn 4, a miss next game berserker by turn 7. Scott, I don't know what those Corn team were doing, but they were out for blood and they took it.
Well, they weren't just out for blood. They weren't just coming off the back of a 1-0 win we looked at earlier. They had the mighty squirrel amongst their ranks as well. So if you could take the mighty squirrel, which gives your opposition that little bit extra something to think about, yeah, it's going to be a long night. And in terms of sort of a mano-a-mano action, standing up to each other, Phil really came out on top. And yeah, Jack, we all know what it's like. As soon as you lose one player, the momentum shifts. And then, the casualties seem to just keep one after the other, and it just gets that consistency and it wears you down as well. Phil's doing really, really, really well. We've talked about that. So I think it was a good result. I wasn't expecting it to be as one-sided as it was, or one-sided as the score indicates as well. So yeah, it was a very, very big one. The comments in terms of surprising how resilient Acorn is. Everybody loves that squirrel. Yeah, I know, Jack. Sometimes with the little ones, you just can't, you can't break his armor. And if you do, you can't get him more than a stun. And again, as soon as someone gets the first block in and you get that momentum with the one casualty, the match can go away from you as well. So really good momentum for Phil. He's looking really strong at the moment, in a bit of a hot vein of form.
Yeah, Tom, like looking at Jack's comments in the chat, Phil played really well. Jack made some mistakes. Phil's dice were hot, Jack's were not, and there were lessons learned there. Of all of the seasons, probably to have a game where your dice completely disappear and your opponent's dice absolutely turn up, an 8-game season, and having it after game 2. The chances are we're all going to have a game like that. Getting it out the way early and being able to learn some things from the game there's worse ways to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was being played on the board next to me with my game coming up, and they were both thinking long and hard about this. This wasn't a rush job straight through. There was lots of tactical play going on. It seemed quite a cluster of everyone in the middle of the pitch, just moving very, very slowly one way or the other. So it was an interesting look. And also, Phil was multitasking as well while watching the qualifying for the sprint race in Brazil as well.
Kudos, Phil. Kudos.
So, the man of many talents.
Dedication to both sports there from Phil. Yeah, a very interesting game, this one, by the sounds of it, and a very interesting outcome here. Phil with a very hot start to this season, 2 wins from 2 from his first 2 games. I know he'll be very pleased with that. In a previous season, this would have got him 5 points. It's only got him 3, but the SPP that he's going to get from those 4 casualties and from those 2 touchdowns, 18 SPP from a game this season, still significant.
Chris, do you mean 6?
He would have got 5 points from this one because he would have needed 3 touchdowns.
My apologies. I thought you meant C's got 6 overall, though, just to clarify.
Oh, yes. Sorry. 6 points overall this. Yes. Yeah, we'll see how far he can take. It's the season of Corn. We can see Corn teams doing very well. We are going to come back to Jack again because Jack has got a 3rd game that he squeezed in this week. But before we do, we will come to the game that we'll all put a loving arm around Mr. Hovell here. The Clueless Crusaders versus the Chaos Storm. A 2-0 victory from the Chaos Dwarves with 3 casualties, 16 SPP coming away from this game. Tom, why don't you tell us how this one went?
Well, all I can say is I'm pleased that the flood barriers were up, or else I would have just walked straight out of Barks and Dragons and just kept walking straight into the river, I think, on this one. It was one of those ones. It happened straight away. Tom Huns got the kickoff. He chose to kick to me. I got rolled blitz, so he took out one of my players straight away. Then on the second turn, on his second turn, a hobgoblin no less killed one of my blitzers. The one is a blitzer without any skills on it, and I apoc'd it. Only for the next kind of turn for my mighty blow blitzer to be killed outright dead. The dice rolls were just ridiculous. I don't know what Bomber Dribble Snot was on fire, and I don't even know why he bothered bringing him, because my team just imploded. It got to a point where I couldn't really do anything apart from just stand players up just to be knocked back down again. It was one of those kind of ones, and the time it took for the whole game to be completed kind of represents that. It's 35 minutes. It was an absolute whitewash, but you know, Tom isn't the champion for no reason. Yeah, and I'm just so pleased I could help him continue his winning score, his winning streak. So just to mention out to anyone else who I'm playing against, if you want, I'm farming out SPP left, right, and centre for people to come and kill the crewless Crusaders.
I think, Scott, we've had this in previous seasons. I think we've had similar situations when it comes to gnomes, when it came to vampires, when it came to Norse, when it, all the new teams that come out. As soon as a new team is released, you're always pretty much guaranteed to get one or two of them appear, and it's kind of a double-edged sword, because the coach playing them probably has had less experience than other teams, but also playing against them, you've got nothing to go on. You've got nothing. You're unlikely to have played them before, and especially this Chaos Dwarf team that they were the team of legend, but the stats are a little bit different. The coach of the new team can catch other coaches off guard, and if they've managed to get the practice in, maybe throw people off by this kind of new setup.
I think in terms of the Chaos Dwarves, particularly run by our current reigning champion, the Prince of Vampires, Mr. Tom Huns, Evening Tom. He's been practicing. We know that he took this team to the Suffolk Subterranean last week as well. He's been looking forward to this team for a while, even though he's playing his centaurs as well with proxy vampires, which is quite stylish. I think when people saw the draw, it was like, with all due respect, shows what people think of Tom. Maybe thought, I don't really want to play Tom at the moment. Even though, to your point, Chris, coaches might have played Chaos Dwarfs when they were Team of Legend. They've had the tackle removed from all of their blockers at the moment. But as I know myself, and as Tom rightly pointed out, when you give Mr. Huns the opportunity, when he does get an opportunity like an opening blitz, when you may make a mistake, he punishes you. He doesn't let that mistake go. And if I'm honest, I think Tom did well to keep it to a 2-0.
Yeah, I think that those Chaos Dwarves are going to be a real threat.
And already he's got block on one of his centaur blitzers.
The interesting thing was, just one bit of advice was, those bull centaurs initially are not as threatening as you think they are. They're not, because they kind of just pushed a lot of players around. He failed a lot of rushes that he had. Luckily, with his sure feet, he managed to get away with. So yeah, interesting. It was interesting play that he brought Bomber as well. I suspect he'll be bringing Bomber every time he can get some inducements.
A good result for Mr. Huns there, with a 2-0 win. Tom, before we move on to the next game, then you've looking at your kind of team, while you lost a kind of key blitzer there, you've got a blitzer that's missing the game. You've got two blitzers with skills. I was looking at your team afterwards, and I was thinking your team value is now a little bit lower. You'll need to take a couple of journeymen, which would just be linemen. But as far as kind of an agile passing game, you've still got a very, very strong lineup there. Is that going to kind of sway the way you attack the next couple of games?
Who knows? I'm going to take Jane's mantra and embrace the chaos.
I look forward to seeing the human chaos that ensues. We will move on to the next game. 3 games left to go. And a result which I did not see coming here. So Honkington's Folly, the Gnome team, 3-1 win and 5 casualties against the Nurgle's Numpties team. And I saw this kind of result happening on Tour Play, and was kind of initially I was a bit shocked that this is kind of the outcome that it was. I thought that, we know how good Elliot is, but then I did kind of think back to last season and how Elliot came away with the conference trophy and came away with his a very good looking necromantic horror team. But the new team, it was a fresh team compared to last season, did get off to a bit of a slow start. Tom, is that what we're seeing here? Do we think it is just, maybe it's going to take Elliot a couple of games to warm to this Nurgle side and kind of the differences there before we see him hit his stride?
Maybe, but in the Suffolk Subterranean, Gnomes won the entire tournament. I'm wondering whether the people have started to get their heads around how this Gnome team plays, because so Honkington's Folly are obviously a redraft, and they've got a few players with, I think they've had a couple with dodge before. I don't think they had that tree man with block. I think that's only come about from after this game. But it's clearly people are starting to learn how to play with this Gnome team. And especially, as you say, against a Nurgle team, which is new, but they've got quite a lot of bigger players, and being able to kind of take out strength 4 players, in fact, he's clearly been positioning the tree men well and holding up a lot of these bloaters. And maybe, like you say, it's something that Elliot needs to get his head around how to play a new team. I don't know how many times he's played Nurgle before he brought them in. Do we know?
I don't know, actually.
No.
I'm not too sure. Scott, an interesting thing when I'm looking at this Gnome team here, he's already got 1 Fox with a movement increase up to 8. He's got 16 SPP on the other one, so I wonder whether we're going to see a similar thing coming here. Looking at some of the players, he's started to get dodge on as many as he can, block on the tree. And we also know that Tom, the Gnome coach, Tom, is... he's got Blood Bowl pedigree. He's new to our league, but he's not new to Blood Bowl. Is Tom right here? Is this have people started to figure Gnomes out, and are we going to start to see them kind of stand out in front of the other stunty teams?
I think people are starting to figure them out and get them more out of their mechanics that they offer. I agree with that. Whether they'll be the best ever of the stunty teams, I think that's another NDP hot topic evening for discussion. We saw this last year. Andy was a good example last year. Sorry, Dave was rather, when he did the 3-tree combo. That seemed to really work in terms of giving the trees that punching power, especially with Mighty Blow on the line. That now with foxes who are movement 8, edge 2, dodge as well, and sidestep and stunty, gives them a really, really good option as well. And if you look at what Tom's done, he's undefeated in 3. So he's done really, really well. Oh, sorry, it was a non-result, wasn't it, against John last year because he couldn't make it. So without playing, okay, you could argue that one. But 2 out of 3 and scoring 3 touchdowns in each of them, it does feel that people are starting to get the best in terms of what are the key skills what do they need to put into their development plan as well. However, they still feel like at least a 2-season build, if I'm honest with you.
I don't think it's. I think we'll all agree that it's, one game into an 8-game season. We're writing nobody off here. We know better than to write off Elliot, especially with some of the results he's had in the past. A very, very good showing for the Gnomes here. If either of you two could suggest anything based on what we know about how Nurgle have done in previous seasons, we know they've been very good. If there's anything you would kind of suggest to Elliot with this kind of team, what would it be?
Randomize the mutations. Everything is fun. Just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That equally foul appearance is pretty difficult to play against if you've got an edge team and you're doing passing and the like. So that's an interesting one.
We look forward to seeing how both these coaches keep going. It'll be good to see if the Gnomes can break through somewhere this season and see whether Elliot can get to grips of this Nurgle team. Looking at our penultimate game, we go to another Nurgle team. A bad week for Nurgle this week, and another very, very good game for Mr. Reader here, 4-0. He's starting to make a little bit of a habit of 4-0 victories this season, starting to set a little bit of an expectation on what's to come from his next game, and a very good result for John. He has kind of managed to get the right sort of skills on these players now. He's got block on all of his vampires. He's then got a combination of dodge and pro and strip ball on the others. This is starting to look like a very, very intimidating vampire team to come up against. The Thralls, not many skills there, but look at the standing SPP here. Scott, it looks like John has started the season in almost perfect fashion and has already got a team that is going to be one to watch.
Yeah, he has. We know, speaking to John about this team, he said after last season he had an itch with vampires. Not the biggest fan, but I think he really, he really starting to click with them as well. That combination of block, dodge, pro as well to give the vampire throwers that extra little bit in terms of the reroll skill as well really, really does help. Although he did fail. I saw the start of this match in store this week. He did fail that first Bloodlust roll, even with a pro reroll. So, but we just say he's coming back there, and he's building it around 5 key vampires. So he's really, got the SPP there to start skilling up as well. Yeah, Thrall's a Thrall. He's got plenty. He's got at least one spare in the bag. So not to worry. And with the 4 rerolls, and he's already up to 29th in the UK regional rankings. So, Mr. John Reader, we take our cap off to you, sir. You are the pace setter of season 8 so far.
Tom, John had a sort of slow start. His biggest problem this season is probably going to be a bit of a team value bloat and inducements he's giving away to other people. If we look at Nick's team, he's still got a lot of good kind of mutations on. He's going down the mutation approach. He's got a reroll there like he didn't have last season. Nick is probably shouldn't feel too down about this one. He's come up against a very good coach on a very good run.
Absolutely. It's that kind of thing I keep thinking about, this simplicity of the skills you have. As we've just said, John's just put the classics on that team and made it almost impenetrable. That team with all that edge and that block and dodge and pro, and don't forget hypno gaze. So then remember that hypno gaze is a kind of used tactic a lot of the times. You put hypno gaze on people and they lose their block. So you can go up against Norse with this team and not be worried. You just hypno gaze them and then go in with someone that's got block and dodge and pro on them. They're going to be decimated. But yes, you can say that these Nurgle teams are equally interesting because I go up against a team that's got all this mutations. It's one of those interesting ones where not a lot of those skills you come across in any other team. So you don't really know what you're coming up against. So you may forget what certain things do, like prehensile tail, or maybe big hand or tentacles. So that's something you'll keep an eye on. So as you say, it's early doors at the moment, so it's all to play for with both these teams.
I think that's a really good point, that Nick going down this random mutation route, which we know can work, we know works very well with the Nurgle team from previous seasons. It does mean that your opponent, there is no kind of uniform. It's not like, oh, okay, well, they've all got block, I can figure that out, or they've all got this, I can figure that out. You are kind of having to remember what all of those mutations do and which ones have what, and it does kind of create a really difficult thing to come up against. Well done to John on this result. I know he's got some more difficult games coming up that he's planning for in the draw, so good luck to him there. Nick, I think, is going to get some good results this season. I'm pretty confident on that, and it's really good to see him with us this season. So good luck to you both in your next games. We will jump on to the last game of the week, a Norse matchup, a mirror match of Norse proportions here. And in a way that mirror matches often do, we've grinded it out to a 1-1 draw. JD will probably be happy with this one. Jack will have probably been looking to get a win, which he's missed out on so far this season. But looking at it, it does look like it has been a pretty even game here. It looks as though our favourite squirrel has come into play once again. I imagine, Scott, that Jack will be pretty sick facing up against Acorn.
If he's not had enough of the rodent by now, he probably will do, because I'm sure it will come into play a lot during the season. I actually think Jack has had 3 pretty tough opening matches against a lot of bash as well, in terms of when we look at it. I think JD, 2 redrafted Norse teams, 2 with a lot of skill set as well, a real slugfest in the middle of the pitch with a lot of blocks. So unsurprisingly, that it is a 1-1. Will both coaches be pleased at that? Difficult to say, although, as we've said several times on the cast tonight, it is early days. It is an 8-game season before the knockout phase. There's plenty more matches to go as well. And I don't think a 1-1 result is necessarily a bad thing. And for both coaches, 9 SP for Jack, 11 SP for JD, who's already in the thing of beauty, randomizing his skills. Some are possibly, no one likes to get armbar on the Berserker, JD. So, I know we all feel that pain for you. But all in all, I think it gives both teams a good place from which to build. The season is far from over for both coaches.
I think, Tom, this is Jack's 3rd game. It's 2 draws and a loss so far this season. We talked about it in previous episode that because we don't have bonus points, getting those draws in is going to be, I think, possibly a bigger thing. And the points that you lose by not getting a win is a lot smaller, because you're not losing out to a 4, 5, 6 point win. You're only losing out to a 3-point win. So 5 games left to play, 8 games in total. Jack's got 5 wins out there that could jump him up the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that interesting thing we mentioned from the previous seasons. Is there an advantage of playing all your games very, very quickly and then sitting back and waiting for the rest to catch up and watching where you finally come in the league, or do you spread them all out? Equally, it does look like he's got most of his kind of bashier opponents out of the way now. So he's got a lot of agile teams there, and he's built a kind of a really impressive team to go up against that. Those Valkyries, in particular, movement 8 with block and dodge is a real threat. I could see that one definitely having a bounty put on them. And the interesting thing again is that Yeti. I've never ever seen a Yeti really do anything much and perform. So it'd be interesting to see how that comes along. But I never. I wasn't. I don't think I ever played Odin's Ravens when they were around, because I didn't even think that. I didn't realize that they were a redrafted team. But it'll be interesting to equally see that, because we mentioned that it's quite a corn heavy team, corn heavy season. But these Norse, they are always there at the forefront.
Yeah, and I think that's we've got an interesting matchup here as far as how will these two teams do going forward. We've got Jack with his Norse, only plays Norse, is going to really know how this team plays. JD registered Corn and then changed to register Dark Elves and then changed to register this Norse team. So there was a little bit of sort of uncertainty as to which one JD would bring. He's brought the Norse now. He didn't have a bad season with the Norse team. He had a very tough, tight group when he brought his Norse team in. It will be quite interesting to see whether that kind of jumping between teams, something that I've done, jumping between different teams, whether he misses out on any kind of consistency. But I think this was this looked like it was going to be a very good game on paper, and I think both coaches should be happy that they've come out of this with points. So that's yeah, well done to JD and well done to Jack. Good luck in your next games. We will have a little look at the tables. It is very, very early days in the tables, but we do have a couple of people setting early expectations here. The Gilded Knights of Cerulean, 2 wins from 2, sitting top of the ABC there. Lots of teams sort of chasing their tail there with wins in the bag. Very early to see how this is going to kind of unfold here. We've got currently the Clueless Crusaders propping up the bottom, but you've got some company there from Elliot and Simon, so a lot can change.
Hey, I can see by the little arrow. I haven't even moved. That's wonderful. I started at the bottom. The only way's up.
Looking at the NBC, John is sitting tidy at the top there with a big touchdown difference already. So coming down to any tiebreakers, he is setting a good precedent there. Luke moves up with that win, putting him into 3rd place. Lots of less games to be played in this one. So we're currently, Leanne is propping up the table, followed by the Inglorious Bastards. But then lots of games left to play, so this could all change within a week. That is all our games. That is us for this week. Those are the 10 games we've gone through. Well done to all coaches who played this week. This coming week, we'll be bringing you another episode of New Dice Please, and we will be bringing you a live game this Thursday. So keep an eye out. There's a few games to pick from. I need to decide how much I trust the technology and therefore who I hand a microphone to. We'll figure that out this week. But that's it for this roundup. Scott, thank you very much. Tom, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning into the roundup. We will catch you on the next one.